Okay, so in our world, right, always connected, always on, have you ever actually stopped to think about the power of, well, intentionally disconnecting just for a bit?
It's a really interesting question, especially now. We're just so geared towards engaging outwards, aren't we? Turning inwards can feel, well, almost unfamiliar.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're getting into in this deep dive. We've been looking at some really insightful takes on solitude.
Mm-hmm.
And the main idea really is that deliberately spending time alone with yourself can actually unlock, deeper self-love
Yeah.
and real personal growth.
Yeah, and that's a big shift for a lot of people, I think, because solitude, it often brings up negative stuff, doesn't it? Like loneliness or being left out.
That's the instant thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
The knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
But the material we've been digging into, it reframes solitude completely. Not as something bad, but as like this really valuable space, almost a workshop for understanding
A
ourselves.
space for growth, yeah, for nurturing your inner life.
Exactly. So our goal today really is to get why seeking out this alone time matters so much and how it directly helps build that self-love.
Okay.
So let's start right there. Why does this intentional solitude, why is it important?
Well, I think the first thing to grasp is the difference between solitude and, say, isolation. It's not about cutting yourself off.
Right, not hiding away.
No, it's more about consciously choosing to tune in to your own thoughts, your feelings, your internal world.
So it's like creating a specific time and place just for you.
Sort of like a sacred space, yeah,
Oh.
where you can heal, reflect, maybe grow without all the external noise chiming in.
That makes sense. It's funny how we give so much attention to everyone else, listening to them, supporting them.
Oh, constantly.
But we often forget ourselves, don't we? We're last on the list.
We really are. And the simple act, just being present with yourself, intentionally directing your focus inward, that's kind of the starting point. That's where self-love begins.
Okay, so self-love starts with that presence, that inward attention. And it sounds like a big part of that is just listening to ourselves. How does that work?
Well, think about the sheer amount of noise we deal with daily. Work demands, opinions, social media feeds. It's endless.
It can absolutely drown out your own thoughts.
Exactly. So solitude is like hitting the mute button on the outside world just for a while. It lets you actually finally hear what's going on inside.
It's like finding that quiet corner you mentioned. The material we looked at actually prompts some pretty deep questions like, how am I really? What do I actually need right now? And crucially, not to perform, not to impress anyone, but just to feel whole.
And those are the questions, aren't they? The ones we usually skate over because we're so focused on meeting external expectations.
We're just anticipating what someone else needs from us.
Right. We lose touch with our own genuine needs, our own, authentic signals. Solitude gives you that quiet space back to reconnect, to actually listen to those inner whispers.
Okay, and something else the sources really highlighted was this idea that alone time helps you heal. That feels important. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, definitely. It links to the idea that emotional wounds need stillness, just like physical ones sometimes. They need quiet to mend properly.
So in that quiet space, things might come up.
That's the idea. In the silence, emotions we normally distract ourselves from or maybe push down, things like grief or anger, regret, even just a sense of longing, they get a chance to surface.
Which sounds potentially uncomfortable, maybe even scary for some people.
Oh, absolutely. The instinct is often to run from those feelings, isn't it?
Yeah, distract yourself. Keep busy.
But the material really emphasizes that just allowing these feelings to be there without judging them instantly, just acknowledging them. That itself is a huge act of self-compassion.
Accepting the whole range of what you feel.
Exactly. And as the sources put it so well, feeling these things doesn't mean you're too sensitive or broken. It just means you're, well, real, human. And that honesty, that emotional honesty with yourself is just vital for healing.
It's like giving yourself permission. Permission to just feel without needing an audience or needing to explain it.
Precisely. No performance necessary.
Okay, now another thing that really stood out was learning to actually enjoy your own company, which, in a world that often equates being alone with being lonely, that sounds almost revolutionary.
It does, doesn't it? But again, it's about reframing. The sources talk about intentionally choosing to be with yourself without the phone buzzing, without the TV on in the background.
That's you.
Just you. And discovering that actually your own company can be enough. It can be fulfilling.
The material mentions things like laughing at your own random thoughts, or
Mm.
maybe doodling something just because, or just sitting quietly and feeling peaceful.
Yeah. It's like building a friendship, but with yourself. You learn to appreciate your own quirks, your own rhythm.
Like you'd nurture any other important relationship.
Exactly right. And when that happens, when you genuinely enjoy your own company, it builds this quiet confidence, this self-reliance.
You realize you don't always need someone else there to feel okay or entertained.
You become your own source of comfort in a way.
Okay, this next point really made me think. It's the idea that growth isn't always loud.
Ah, yes. This is a subtle one, but so important.
Because we tend to think of growth as these big, obvious things, right? Promotions,
It's
achievements, milestones.
very external markers, yeah. But the sources highlight how often growth happens quietly, internally.
Can you give some examples from the material?
Sure. Things like finally saying no to something that you know just drains you,
Well, that's a big one.
isn't it? Or allowing yourself to actually cry when you feel sad instead of holding it in. Or reading a book just for pleasure, not because you should.
Or even just creating a little peaceful corner in your home.
Huh?
Or resting without feeling guilty about it.
Exactly. These seem like small things, maybe insignificant on their own.
Right. Tiny choices.
But making these quiet choices consistently, day after day, that's how you build a life that feels authentically yours. It's about prioritizing your inner well-being over those external pressures.
And that ties back to self-love, doesn't it? These quiet acts are like little votes for yourself, saying, I matter.
Absolutely. They're powerful signals you send yourself about your own value, a commitment to your own well-being.
Which leads us nicely into the last point, maybe the most, well, transformative one. You become the person you were waiting for. That one really hit home.
It speaks directly to that tendency we have, that very human thing of looking outside ourselves for validation.
Like waiting for someone to rescue us or complete us.
Yeah, or just make the loneliness go away. We hope someone else will provide the comfort or the inspiration or the strength we feel we're lacking.
But solitude turns that on its head.
It really does. Because in that quiet space, you start to realize that sense of completeness, that comfort, that strength, even that joy, it's actually within you already.
Wow. So by spending that intentional time with ourselves, we're not really waiting anymore.
No. You're discovering, you're cultivating the resources you already possess.
It's not about fixing something that's missing.
It's about realizing you were never actually lacking. You're just becoming more fully yourself.
That's powerful. Solitude becomes the container for that discovery.
Exactly. The safe space where you can tap into your own resilience, your own wholeness, and really start to own it.
Okay, so let's try and bring this all together. It sounds like solitude isn't the punishment we sometimes think it is. It's not about being isolated and miserable.
Not at all. The sources call it a powerful pause, a deliberate stepping back from all the external demands and noise.
A chance to actually connect with yourself.
And in that pause, as the material beautifully puts it, that's where you plant the seeds of who you're becoming.
It's an active thing then, not passive waiting.
Very active, intentional self-nurturing.
I like the simple imagery used too. Suggesting maybe just lighting a candle, sitting quietly for a few minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated, does it? Small, accessible moments.
It feels like something anyone could try incorporating.
Which really leads to a final thought, something for you, the listener, to maybe reflect on.
Okay.
Self-love. It isn't something you just find one day or something someone else gives you. It's something you build. You cultivate it.
Moment by moment.
Exactly. Often in those quiet moments when it's just you, choosing yourself, choosing your own well-being.
So the question is,
Yeah, maybe consider this. How could intentionally weaving just small pockets of solitude into your daily routine, how might that start to shift your relationship with yourself?
definitely something to think about. How those quiet choices add up.
It's worth exploring for sure.
Okay, so in our world, right, always connected, always on, have you ever actually stopped to think about the power of, well, intentionally disconnecting just for a bit?
It's a really interesting question, especially now. We're just so geared towards engaging outwards, aren't we? Turning inwards can feel, well, almost unfamiliar.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're getting into in this deep dive. We've been looking at some really insightful takes on solitude.
Mm-hmm.
And the main idea really is that deliberately spending time alone with yourself can actually unlock, deeper self-love
Yeah.
and real personal growth.
Yeah, and that's a big shift for a lot of people, I think, because solitude